As we've been talking with women around the country about their forced or coerced abortions, we've noticed some common themes. When it comes to the source of their abortion pressure, women often share that it was either a parent, partner, or abortion worker that pushed them into the act. Today, we will pull back the curtain and shed light on the tactics abortion workers take to sell abortions, and how they pressure women into ending the lives of their children. And what better way to understand these tactics than by going straight to the source? We sat down with a former abortion worker, Abby Johnson. Abby is a defected Planned Parenthood director turned pro-life advocate who sheds light on the strategic business decisions and pressure campaigns conducted by the abortion industry against everyday women across the country. Today, Abby leads the nonprofit And Then There Were None, an organization devoted to helping abortion workers quit the industry and heal from the trauma caused by their work. Her group provides them with the financial, emotional, spiritual, and legal support they need to break free from the industry. To date, over 700 workers have quit. Let's hear what she has to say. From Exposed, Abortion in America, this is Under Pressure, an insider's guide to professional pressure tactics.
My name is Abby Johnson, and I am the CEO of And Then There Were None and Pro-Love Ministries.
You know, Abby, many people have heard your story, but just in case, can you share briefly your backstory and why you are specifically so uniquely qualified to speak on the Planned Parenthood and Abortion Center POV for this particular topic?
Sure. I went to work for Planned Parenthood as a college student after having an abortion, and eventually rose up through the ranks and became an abortion clinic director, one of their center directors in Texas. We were affiliated with Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast, the third largest Planned Parenthood affiliate in the country, and ran a very successful clinic and was there for 8 years. Left after witnessing, I left after several things, but ultimately left after witnessing a live ultrasound-guided abortion where I saw a 13-week-old baby fight and struggle for his life against the abortion instruments. And I had the realization then that there was humanity in the womb, there was life in the womb, and I knew that if those two things were true, then I was on the wrong side of the fence. So I ended up leaving and have been doing my best to expose the horrors of abortion and really exposing what's taking place inside of the abortion industry ever since.
We're going to be talking a lot about how coerced or forced unwanted abortions are on women, but we would be remiss not to talk about an always forced abortion attempt on the child. And so that is interesting that you brought up the forced abortion that you saw on the ultrasound. Anything more you want to add on that for children really being those victims of the forced abortion attempts?
I think that, of course, we talk a lot about women throughout the abortion process, and there are so many stories, things I've witnessed personally, but also stories that I've heard from former abortion workers and things that they have witnessed inside of these abortion clinics. And I think that we have to always center these discussions around the true victim of abortion, and that is the child in the womb. I remember when I worked at the clinic, I remember there was a woman there, and she ended up leaving the clinic, and I didn't really, I'd never seen anything like she was talking about at that time, but I remember she was a woman who worked back in the POC lab, the products of conception lab. She left immediately after witnessing something in the POC lab, and I remember her telling me why she was leaving, and she had told me that she was doing the count of the body parts after an abortion, and a baby came back, and it was supposed to be a 16-week abortion, but she said it looks more like an 18-week abortion. And she said when she dumped all of the parts out into the tray and was reassembling them, she said that half of the body was still intact. And she said that she said the heart was still beating in the baby's chest. And she said that she saw the baby's hand open and close, and the heart stops beating. And I never, of course, seen anything like that at that time in the clinic. I'd never heard anything like that before. And now, as I've been out of this and I've heard so many stories of women who have worked in the industry, we've helped over 700 women leave now. And some of the women that we've worked with have had to go to inpatient psychiatric facilities after leaving the industry. 95% of our workers have diagnosable PTSD. 38% have suicidal ideation after they leave the industry. 18% after actually attempt suicide. And one of our clients did commit suicide after leaving. They leave because of what they see in those POC rooms. They leave because they witness babies being drowned alive in buckets. They leave because they see babies that are born alive. They see their necks slit and their spinal cord severed. That's why they leave. And so I think in these discussions, at the forefront of these discussions, we always keep in mind that at the forefront of abortion, the victimization is the child in the womb. And I think that that's always very important for us to remember in the pro-life movement.
There's no doubt about that. And that's why during this series and this discussion, we've got a lot of data on forced and coerced abortions regarding women, but we're also going to be talking to Abortion Survivors Network, because that truly is the forced abortion attempt on their lives. And, they're living today to speak to it. So I'm glad that you're able to give us your perspective, but we're also going to get that perspective as well from those survivors. So jumping back to the women now, we have been talking to women all over the country about their unwanted and pressured abortions. One common thread that keeps coming up that we hear from women are there are three common sources for who typically push them into abortions. The women tell me that it's almost always either their partner, their parent, or Planned Parenthood, an abortion center. And it could be a combination of multiple sources. So that's what they are reporting. Does that sound right to you in terms of your experience?
Of any of those three, I would say probably the top two nowadays would be probably partner pressure, and it's probably number one, and probably the pressure from the industry is always there. But I would say that probably comes in under partner pressure. The industry now, because there's been so many, in a lot of states, the industry has been kind of defeated through ultrasound legislation, waiting periods, things like that. And that is, time is the enemy of Planned Parenthood. So ultimately what they would like what the abortion industry would like is they would like for kind of the ideal situation would be for a woman to come in who's unsure if she's pregnant. They pop a positive pregnancy test, and Planned Parenthood immediately says, all right, well, let's get you back on that table right now, or let me go ahead and get you those pills right now. Go ahead and swallow this mifepristone right now. Let's end the pregnancy. Time is their enemy, because as soon as she walks out the door, she can, go talk to somebody in her support group who could potentially say, you know what, you can do this. I can help you. She can go talk to her partner who may say, you know what, yeah, I'm excited about having a baby. And there's kind of a realization from the abortion industry that the longer she has that child in her womb, the more likely she is to develop a maternal bond with her child. And so if you can catch her in that moment of crisis, that's the best scenario for the industry, is to get her while she feels vulnerable.
I'm really curious because I've heard competing kind of theories on this, but you are the best person to ask this of. Is it because those who work in the industry are true believers in abortion alleviating something for the woman, or is it purely a predatory financial, or is it a mixture of both? What do you think?
So the industry, so we're going to have to look at it in two different ways. So you have like the industry, right, which is kind of the people at the top, right, the kind of the systematic like industry of Planned Parenthood and its partners, the National Abortion Federation and NARAL and these groups of people. And I would say at the top, kind of the system of abortion, it's incredibly predatory. And so they are, they're looking for those low-income women. They're, putting their clinics in those low-income neighborhoods. They're preying on Medicaid patients. They're trying to convince women to get abortions, that sort of thing. They're out there, against ultrasound bills, and they're even out there, railing against bills that protect victims of sex trafficking, right? Which you think to yourself, how can you even be against that, right? But they are. But I think in the clinics themselves, I mean, all the people that we talk to, kind of just the people that are in the clinic doing the day-to-day, these hourly workers, they really are in there thinking, I'm helping women. These are women that really need help. These are women who they're already overloaded with children, right? They already have children that they're having a hard time caring for. I mean, we know that about 60% of women who have abortions already have children at home. So, they're thinking, I'm already overwhelmed. I can't take care of the kids I have. And these workers in the clinic are just thinking, I'm just here to help, right? And I do want to say also, we know that about 70% of women who work in the abortion industry, they've already had abortions themselves. And in fact, many of the women that we talk to who come through our ministry were clients of the abortion clinic where they went to go work. So some of our clients were actually recruited to work at the abortion clinic in the recovery room after they had their abortions. So these women who work in these abortion clinics are essentially people who are also wounded by abortion, who then go to work in these same abortion clinics. And we hear that over and over and over again. So I think it's to say that, we're just kind of living in this wounded culture all around us. We're living among the walking wounded. And, to go back to the pressure question, I think we have a lot of pressure. We hear, pressure from partners. And on the flip side, we also hear that if a woman is thinking about abortion and her partner is supportive, that is the person in her life that's most influential, even over parents. to convince her not to have an abortion. So the partner, I think, can be the most detrimental, or can be the person that really flips it around for a woman who's considering an abortion. So I think the partner is actually the key in whether a woman is going to have an abortion or whether she's not. And we hear that over and over again on our hotline, that, my boyfriend doesn't want the baby, my boyfriend has walked away, my boyfriend has said he's going to leave if I have the baby. Usually there's a financial pressure to have an abortion. And of course, financial pressure, that's all relative, right? I mean, I could say I don't have enough money, but someone who is more impoverished than me could look at me and say, "Oh my gosh, you're so wealthy," right? So
yeah,
that those finances are all completely relative.
What I think is really interesting, particularly on the finances part, is we've heard from women that say, "I went into Planned Parenthood and they read me a laundry list of why my life is not good enough to have a kid." Are there other tactics like that come to mind of different ways in which, whether they're intentionally doing it or not, quotas, what are some of these things that abortion workers know this will really get the outcome that I want from this woman?
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of it's unintentional, but I think the abortion clinic workers are kind of taught this is kind of, this is how you talk a woman into getting an abortion. And they don't say it that way, but essentially they tell them, this is how you help a woman get an abortion, right? So it's always kind of fun in a positive manner. So you feel like you're doing something good. You feel like you're helping a woman, because certainly an abortion is going to alleviate the problems that she has right now. Because abortion in the abortion industry is always seen as a solution to a problem.
You mentioned a clock, though. Time is kind of the worst enemy of the abortion center. Is that how they keep workers complicit and kind of turning a blind eye when the guy walks in there with the woman and, she can tell that this is maybe not a full decision or full choice that this woman is making by herself, but there is some pressure there?
Yeah, so there's a couple things on that. Let me kind of go back. There are for sure quotas. So every clinic has a quota of the certain amount of abortions that you need to sell. That's how they make up their budget. That's how every abortion clinic makes up their budget. Now, let me say there's not a quota on the family planning side. So if it is a Planned Parenthood and they have both a family planning and an abortion side to their business, there is not a quota for the number of pap smears you have to sell, right? There's not a quota for the amount of, birth control methods that you need to sell to patients. There is, though, a number of abortions that you have to sell.
Why is that?
And that's in every abortion facility. Well, because quite honestly, family planning you lose money on family planning. You don't make money on your family planning business in abortion, in the abortion clinics. Abortion or family planning is simply a means to get people in the door. So it's a means to just kind of have that touch point with clients, knowing that eventually for many, many women that come to your door, that those family planning methods, those birth control methods, they're going to fail at some point in time. And when they fail, Planned Parenthood will be there. I mean, Marketing 101 tells us whoever they had that touch point with, they're going to be there to tell you, oh, don't worry, we have the solution, and that solution is abortion. So not only, particularly if it's a birth control pill that has a really high human error rate, you're coming in every month to get that birth control pill. So you're developing a relationship with that clinic every month as you come in to get your birth control pill. Mm-hmm. So there's some kind of marketing psychology behind that too, that Planned Parenthood has figured out, and they're very good at it. So they know these strategies. So you have your quotas. You have your, of course, your birth control failure rate, which is that's in favor of the abortion industry. And you're trained. You're trained well. We had training specifically for how to talk to religious women about having abortions, how to alleviate any guilt, any potential guilt that they may have regarding getting an abortion. How to just wipe that clean. There's all kinds of training that we go through on how to talk about abortion to women, how to alleviate any concerns about potential risks that, maybe, or any complications that may come along with abortions, and how to minimize those. So you go through all of these trainings while you're working in the abortion industry. And you feel like, they make you feel like, oh, you're doing the right thing again.
Are there any trainings on how to spot trafficking or coerced abortions? Anything like to that effect?
No, there's no training on that. There's no training on sex trafficking. In fact, there were several times where, in my facility in particular, where we had women come in who we knew were victims of trafficking. We just knew that. And there was discussion about, this was not when I was the director, but there were discussions with the director at the time about whether this needed to be reported. Certainly she would come in with her abuser at times, and we would have discussions like, okay, well, next time she has an appointment, should we call the police? Should we have him here? Should we have the police here? And the discussion always, in every case, every single time that would happen, the discussion from my boss, the director, was, if she really wanted to get out, she would get out. This is what she wants to be doing. As if women enjoy being trafficked. Mm. And we've heard that from several different former abortion workers, that anytime trafficking comes up in the abortion industry, if they have a client that comes in that they think may be a victim of trafficking or abuse, that anytime they bring it up to a supervisor or to a director, that is sort of the conversation that, well, she's a big girl. If she wanted to get out, she could get out. Or the comment is made that they like it, that they like being in that situation. And if they wanted to get out, they would. So it's almost like this victim blaming.
Just to be clear, because, the rationalization for a lot of, like you said, the abortion workers is they really got into this because this is something they did, either thinking it was a net positive for their life and then wanting to give back. But that's not what happens when you're turning a blind eye to the situations that you just described. So how does Planned Parenthood or how does the abortion center really keep these workers complicit in turning that blind eye, in your mind?
Oh, I think once you're in, honestly, once you're in the industry, look, I went in with good intentions, but once I was in, you become really blind to the things that are right in front of your face. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot in the pro-life movement about how the abortion industry directly targets poor women to have abortions, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. But they do the same for their abortion clinic workers. So, particularly, those that they don't look to advance or anything like that. They just need some daily help, daily workers or hourly workers. They're unqualified to do the jobs that they're doing. They're untrained. And so they get them from these places. They put them into a position that they're unqualified to do. They pay them a lot of money to do it. They pay them more money than they would get paid anywhere else, doing a job that they're not qualified to do. And then they get them essentially hooked on a lifestyle. And, they provide insurance benefits. Planned Parenthood has great benefits for their employees. And they get them, hooked on a lifestyle into an apartment that they couldn't afford working anywhere else. They get them into a car payment, right, that they couldn't afford anywhere else. And then you start seeing all of these things that are happening at the clinic. And these women are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to work here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But where else could I go that's going to pay me this amount of money? Where else could I go that's going to provide me these insurance benefits for me and my children? I've never had this anywhere else. And the workers feel trapped. And that's exactly what they do. I mean, that's what abortion does. Mm-hmm. I mean, people feel trapped. It's all fear. It's fear-based. And that's what the enemy does. He essentially holds us hostage and makes us feel like we need to do things that we, under most circumstances, would never do.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of fear-based, that's really kind of the whole narrative around coerced and forced abortions. We recognize there's recent studies on this that show just how rampant it is in our country. But something that's really struck me is the fact that there are so many people, women affected by this. No one talks about it, even though we know it happens around the country. I mean, that's my own personal story. It took me over a decade just to even acknowledge that there was abortion coercion. So in your mind, why do you think it's this hidden epidemic that we just don't talk about?
It's just shame. I mean, I think there's a lot of shame surrounding abortion. And I mean, I've had 2 abortions. I can say that there should be shame. When we talk about abortion, there should be a stigma. When we talk about abortion, we shouldn't be proud of the fact that abortions are taking place in our country at the rate that they're taking place, right? Mm-hmm. But I think for women that have had abortions, I think that they're terrified to come forward and talk about what they've experienced because they think that there's going to be such a heavy judgment on them from the public or from their family or from people in their community. And they don't want people to know what they've done. I mean, we treat abortion differently than we treat other sins in the Christian community. Mm-hmm. And so I think women are they're scared. And I mean, even if you look on social media, we were doing things at the Supreme Court and, one of our clients came out and told her story about having 4 abortions. And, now she's a woman of faith and she works for our ministry. And that would be something to celebrate, right? Their life has been turned around and she's healed of her past. But the comments from people were horrendous. Mm. And so if a woman looks at that and looks at those comments and thinks, okay, I'm going to share my story, and then they look at the comments, they're like, whoa, never mind. Yeah. And so I think there's certainly just a fear of coming forward because of judgment. I know after I had my chemical abortion, I was very physically harmed by my chemical abortion. And yet I still went back. I'd been lied to by the place where I worked. And instead of kind of revolting, right, and saying, you lied to me. Like, I can't believe you've done this. I'm leaving. I'm never coming back. I still went to work there. I still went back. And to a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't even make sense to me now. But I think it's self-loathing. Like, well, this is what I deserved. I was not, we had been telling women that having a chemical abortion was just like having a heavy period, that it was, a more natural option for abortion, that you would have mild cramping. Essentially, it was just like having a period. That's what we were telling women. And, you could just take some ibuprofen, just like you do with your period, and you'll be fine. And there was nothing like I experienced. And I had not had a child at that time, so I didn't really understand that what I was going through was, now I have 8 children, but I didn't understand at that time that I was experiencing labor contractions, the contractions you experience during labor. I didn't understand that. But I'd never felt that kind of pain before. And, we weren't telling women that. We weren't telling people that. And the interesting thing is that, when I worked at Planned Parenthood, and people are like, God, didn't you know that women were harmed from abortions? I'm like, I didn't. I worked there for 8 years. I didn't know that women regretted their abortions. And that seems crazy to people, but I didn't know. Because generally, when you are harmed by something, when you're harmed by someone, you generally don't go back to that same place and go, you really hurt me. Generally, you avoid that person, or you avoid that place. And I think that's what happened with us. I think there are a lot of people that were harmed or traumatized or, hurt by their abortion at our facility, and they never came back to tell us. The only people that we ever saw over and over and over again were the people that were very happy that they had an abortion. And so we had people they would come in for 6, 12, 15 abortions. And I thought, well, this is helping them. This is good for their life. This is, we would have people come in for repeat abortions, and they were happy with their result. And so I legitimately did not think that women regretted their abortions until I got into the pro-life movement. And then I started really listening to women who had abortions and really were regretful about their decision. And that's what really opened my eyes to what was really taking place in the minds of women as they were going through that experience. So many women in our society are so incredibly traumatized by the situation that they're in that even caused them to get pregnant, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're in terrible relationships. They've been victims of abuse. I can tell you, almost all the women that contact us at Loveline, at our hotline, they're almost all victims of abuse in some way, shape, or form, either in their childhood or in their current relationship or in a past relationship with a boyfriend. I think so many of these women are operating from a place of abuse, and they're just kind of moving in that way. And I mean, 10, 15 years later, all that trauma kind of catches up with them. And then they realize, oh my gosh, also during all of that time, I also had an abortion. I also took the life of my child.
Well, that kind of gets to what you were saying earlier, Abby, about how the abortion center recognizes it's a prerogative to hit that woman kind of at the apex of her crisis.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. And I think that's why the partner, their supportiveness or not being supportive, that's what's so critical in the life of that woman. Because if she has been in an abusive situation, and then whether it's that current partner or previous partner, and then she goes back to her partner, and her partner says, yeah, just get rid of it. That state of crisis is even enhanced. It's even further enhanced. Mm-hmm. And so she's just kind of on a fast-moving train, Whereas if she goes back to a partner and the partner says, you know what, but I think we can do this. Like, I think I want to be the father. I want to be a father. Like, I want to take care of my kid. I think we can do this together. I'll support you. It's like that high speed train is kind of paused. It's slowed down, and it gives her time to really think about it. But if she has an unsupportive partner, then it's like, let me get into that abortion clinic as soon as I can. And of course, the abortion clinic, that's exactly what they want. So they'll take advantage of that. They're not going to sit down and go, well, let's talk about, like, maybe you could do this on your own, or maybe you could, no, they're not going to do that. Their job really, if a woman comes in and says, I'm single, I know I'm a single mom, or I know I'm in school, but I really want to do this. I really want to be a mom. I think I can do it. Their job at that point is really to wreck her plan, to show her how she can't do it. That's really their intention.
That was my question. I mean, what do they offer? We know from the research, we know from pro-abortion research even, that women, the majority cite financial or emotional, the lack of those resources as a primary motivator for getting an abortion. So we know that those conversations are happening, or a woman is citing that. What is Planned Parenthood? What are abortion centers? How are they, counseling her instead of trying to put her on that fast track just to abortion? How are they counseling her on the alternatives to abortion? And what are they offering her resource-wise if she's considering an alternative to an abortion?
So they don't. They really don't counsel women at all. And in fact, the last year I was at Planned Parenthood, I had gotten my master's in counseling, and I recognized that we were not appropriately counseling women. We were not counseling them at all, their options. But it said on our website that we were doing options counseling. And so I thought, I want to rectify this. I'm a counselor now. I want to rectify this. So I actually wrote a 75-page protocol for appropriate options counseling at Planned Parenthood. And I sent it off to Planned Parenthood Federation of America for approval, for an actual protocol approval. And right before I left, I received a denial letter from PPFA stating that they did not find it to be revenue generating. And they were denying it because it was not revenue generating.
Oh, wow.
For the organization. And of course it's not. Of course it's not revenue generating, because they don't do anything for pregnant women except kill their children. So if a woman comes in and she decides she wants to keep her child, well, they don't provide prenatal care. So they're not going to help that woman in keeping her child. They used to. When I first started working for Planned Parenthood, they used to actually provide prenatal care, but they got rid of that a couple years after I started on with them, citing that pregnant women were too cumbersome. That was their quote.
Wow.
They needed too many visits. They called too many times. They asked too many questions. And so they dropped their overall prenatal program. There's no money in adoption for them. They don't get any kickbacks for adoption or anything like that. And so they don't count on adoption. So, Planned Parenthood tells their workers that every client visit needs to be a revenue generating visit. Well, the only way for a pregnant woman to be revenue generating for Planned Parenthood is for her to obtain an abortion through them. And so that's the sell. That's the pitch, is that woman needs to walk out of there with an abortion that day or an abortion scheduled. And one of the ways that we would do that to encourage her to come back for that abortion is to say to her, well, if you let us do an ultrasound today to determine how far along you are in the pregnancy, then you pay us $150 a day for the ultrasound, and then we will discount your procedure that $150. So to kind of incentivize them to come back, otherwise they lose the $150. And so that's a very common sales tactic in the abortion industry. I just want to say, while the abortion industry certainly does not provide, help for these women. I also want to say, as we talked about, one of the number one reasons women have abortions is financial pressure. And I think that there is an opportunity for us in the pro-life movement to also step up our game to help women relieve that financial pressure. And, that's why I started Loveline, to fill this sort of gap through holistic case management, through counseling. We need to be, finding counselors to help them to get to the root of why they're having these abortions. Why do they keep going back to abusive partners? Why, what's going on here? Why do they continue to have unplanned pregnancy after unplanned pregnancy? Why is their self-worth so low? Why do they even walk into an abortion clinic in the first place? And I think we can do that in the pro-life movement. I think we can do better. And we have a network of over 3,000 pregnancy centers that have the solution. But I think we need to continue to think bigger than we're thinking right now. And I think that we have the solution to this unplanned pregnancy, this crisis pregnancy epidemic that's happening in our country right now.
And then did you want to share a little bit about, and then there were none too, just so people understand that side of advocacy from you?
Sure, yeah. We reach directly into these abortion facilities, and our whole intention is to help win souls for Christ. And so we have done that. We have helped over 700 abortion clinic workers leave the industry and come into a relationship with Christ. Through that, then also the advocacy sort of part of that is that we then work with the ones that want to. We work with these former workers. We connect them with local, state, and federal officials to report what is going on inside of these clinics and the illegal activity. And we have helped to shut down 48 abortion clinics through the testimonies of these former workers.
All right. Well, Abby, thank you so much for joining us today. And we really appreciate everything that you've shared. And I hope it really helps people and also informs them moving forward.
Of course. Of course. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the firsthand account of former abortion worker Abby Johnson, as she shared the landscape of pressured abortions through institutions in America. Join us through this entire series to hear more accounts of abortion coercion in depth, and join us for our next episode as we speak to members of Congress as they share potential legislative solutions to stop the trafficking and pushing of women into abortions. From Exposed, Abortion in America, this is Under Pressure.